So everybody, good evening. Thank you for stopping by this voluntary session. I appreciate it. I'm going to go over two things. Number one, the technology-rich lesson plan, show you the resources that are there and what, some of the expectations for the lesson plan. And two, I'll go over what I've prepared for the final exam, which will be taken next week, and I'll go over all the information for that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Ready, so here we are, sharing the screen. I'm going to go into our bright space area, and I'm going to go to Module 6. So during Module 6, it was really looking at integrating technology into instruction. It was really about the pedagogy, the teaching practice, the art and craft of actually teaching using technology, with a focus on today's diverse learners. Notre Dame is really passionate about preparing future learners, and we know that we teach a diverse learning population. So I'm gonna scroll through all this, the module plan, the presentation. There's a little bit of a review on a rubric, and also a really useful set of guidelines, universal design for learning, that is filled with ways in which you can differentiate and help to reach all learners. It's a great resource when you're using planning. Let me click on it real quick. It gets you to think as you're doing planning, as you're engaging with instruction, as you are working with students and helping them with their goals. It really gives you ways in which multiple representations, multiple ways of doing things to try and help reach your students. For instance, when you're working and creating lesson plans, there's it comes up with different strategies for, and I should say multiple strategies for helping learners to be successful. So for instance, if you look underneath column 1, you'll see that provides options for perception. There's offer ways of customizing the display of information, offers alternatives for auditory information, offers alternatives for visual information. When you're all offering alternatives, it's like you're trying to reach multiple senses, multiple ways of students kind of capturing and retaining information. If you go to actions and expressions, vary the method for response and navigation. That would be like, how are my learners learning? How are they demonstrating how they learned? It's different than, okay, I just want you to write a paragraph. I'd like you to do a podcast, or I'd like you to instead maybe act it out in like a play or a skit, or create a poster, or do a video. There's a lot of different ways in which you can obviously respond when students can demonstrate what they've learned. And so that's the Universal Design for Learning guide and framework. You'll probably see it plenty of times throughout your coursework here. So I just wanted to kind of hit on that a little bit. And again, if you want more information, there's plenty of stuff out there on the Universal Design for Learning. But really what I want to, so during your work last week, I had to do two activities. I had to do the technology-enriched lesson plan proposal. So it was a template, and I was actually lucky enough to get all of them back yesterday and today to all of my classes. So I went through and read 40 some of these proposals, and I'm a little proposaled out right now, but it was really helpful to be able to kind of get an idea of what you wanted to do for your lesson plan, and give you some ideas and suggestions for when you actually write up your lesson plan. So I was able to, if you click on here, you should be able to get back, and I put feedback for your proposal there that you can use for your lesson plan. If not, I think you can also access it through the grades section. So if you go to up here to tools and you go to grades, you may be also able to see the material I gave you there as well. It's okay if you couldn't make it. Yoko, I'm just gonna mute you. I was hearing my feedback on your feed. Okay, so let me keep going. And the other thing I really wanted you to work on coming up with a process for vetting and using web resources with your students, that you're actually going in and being critical with the resources that you find. So I had you complete a search log. The search log was just identifying 3 or 4 tools that you used that you were thinking about using with your lesson plan, and to kind of vet those resources to consider if they're good or if they're bad, and the thought process on how you were going to use them. Now, it's not set in stone. If you ended up changing your mind about the search log, you are more than welcome to change it up, and you don't have to change anything on your search log or anything like that. It was just me getting the opportunity to just to assess how you were coming up with resources. It's just, I wanted to kind of get the idea of the process. Okay, so coming down here to the technology-rich lesson plan, which I shorten, I call it TELP. If you open this up, you will get to all these different resources. So there's the lesson plan template, project specifications. I'm just going to open up the lesson plan here and show you what it looks like real quick. I'm sure you all are going to be, if you haven't opened it already, this is the lesson plan format for you. Okay. So as you know, we do something called the Assure model. The Assure model is a lesson plan. It's an instructional design process in which, but it's obviously also lesson planning. It's a design framework. So it's a way that instructional designers develop courses. It's also a way that K through 12 educators can obviously also design instruction for their students. It starts off with all the simple things that you typically would do for a lesson plan: the name, the subject, the name of the lesson, whatever you're going to call it, the grade level, and that length, how long you're going to have. For this lesson plan, I asked you just to focus on one lesson. So it doesn't have to be a unit. It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be multiple days. It just has to be like instruction that you would do for an hour or 45 minutes or 75 minutes or 90 minutes, whatever you would teach. You can plan it for whatever you want. However, don't try to do multiple days. It's just too long of a lesson plan. We're only looking at one instructional period, I guess is the best way to say it. For a lot of you, I talked about analyzing learners, and a lot of you are like, what does this mean? Well, as educators, we really get to know our learners. We get to know like their strengths, their weaknesses. We get to know about the community that we serve them in. We get to know about what are ways that they like to learn, what are ways that they don't like to learn, that they may not excel in. We get to know all this information. Sometimes we know a little bit about learning preferences. My students all love visual learning. My students like to be hands-on. They love activities. They love singing. It's all of that information that you can take in and that you can put in this type of information. It's really good for instance, if you're going to do lesson planning, it's really good to communicate this because we know that we teach a diverse learning population. So if you're taking in all of this stuff into account as you're doing instruction, the better. So this way, it's really kind of giving like almost the introduction. If it was a movie, it's almost giving like the introduction to your classroom, like what community it serves, what's the makeup of your classroom, who's in it, I guess is the best way to say it. For stating the objectives, so we know that now if you've gone through the Module 6 materials, you know that when it comes to technology integrated instruction, we really use an integrated method. We don't just teach technology for technology's sake. We integrate it into our curriculum. We integrate it into science and social studies and English language arts and math and health and whatever ones you want to, whatever subjects that you teach. So that means that number one, we have to draw from the curriculum. Okay, so we would go to the math and the science and social studies, we'd teach them, but we also have to consider what technology we're teaching, as in what skills or concepts or what abilities that we're trying to get our students to do. So I ask you to really go to the ISTE standards for students, to take a look at all the different standards and figure out which one aligns to the instruction that you're going to do. So for all of your TELP proposals, I said, please go to the ISTE standards for students and consider what to do for that. So I ask you to kind of take that into account. And then I also talk about the structure of your lesson objective. Now, if Prince George's County does theirs a little bit different, I'm just going by how, if you go to a curriculum course, they really talk about the ABCDs of writing a lesson plan or writing a lesson objective. So I can even cite the guy's name. His name's Tyler. He's been, he was He was a professor from the University of Illinois for a long time. He is probably one of the fathers of curriculum for the United States. He came up with this ABCD kind of formula for writing an objective, and we still have it to this day. So after you've created, and I did put up here a few of the older versions of Maryland. I will say this is that the Maryland ones are extremely outdated. The TL8s, they're pretty much retiring. In fact, this is probably the last class. If you picked one of those instead for your lesson plan, it's not a big deal. I'll honor it. But I will say that you really need to become very much aware of the ISTE standards for students. Any questions so far on these preliminary elements of the lesson plan template? If you have to, you can absolutely still ask questions after I'm done. Okay, so for S, we get to the first S, and that's selecting, modifying, or designing learner responses. So from here, so actually, I'm sorry, that's the second S. The first S was stating objectives. The second S is select, modify, or design learner resources. So you're going to think about the online resources. You're going to think about the physical resources. You're going to think about the resources that you need to bring to the lesson plan. So think about everything, the digital stuff, the things that you're going to have, digital stuff, the virtual stuff, the stuff that you'll be working in your face-to-face classroom, the actual physical materials, the manipulatives. Think about what you're going to have there. And I also even have a little separate area for the online resources that you're going to use. Next is the U, which means utilize materials and require learner responses. So in this section, I get you to actually write out. So I take the U and the R. You actually get to write out your instructional activity. You start at the very beginning and you work your way, from like a warm-up or an engagement activity all the way to the statement to where you would almost be finishing up your lesson. Okay, so I will say this: write it step by step, write it sequential, try to add detail, try to get it to where I could almost close my eyes or I could be a sub and almost teach these lessons perfectly. And of course, then there's the evaluation. How are you going to assess the learning that's occurred during this lesson plan? Popular ways of doing that. There's exit tickets. There's a product that you get them to create. I will say this, probably one of the biggest mistakes that people do during lesson planning is, right, I'm going to get my students to complete a worksheet. Well, worksheets, there's all sorts of things. What are you doing on the worksheet? Focus on what they're doing on that worksheet and don't just say they're going to complete a worksheet. There's a lot of things that they could do. Focus on specifically what they're doing. You can even give a couple of examples of the problems they would be doing if they're doing math or if they're doing science, like what's the activity that they're doing. So just focus on trying to talk about that. And I might talk about like, how are you going to evaluate that? That is, what are the look fors? What are you looking for? And again, you go back to your objectives, you go back to the curriculum. How are you assessing those objectives? How are you figuring out that your students actually got what you were teaching? And then there's follow-up is just a short statement of what you're going to do next. It doesn't have to be something super long. It's just, we do lesson planning in a sequence. I'm just wanting to see what's going to happen next. Okay. So that's the lesson plan template. I tried to put text in there to give you guidance and advice and suggestions as you write it out. And you can see that the lesson plan proposal I gave to you, probably 60% of it's already done because you can take stuff right from the proposal and almost fit it into there for it. So it was really meant to help you with this lesson plan. Now, this lesson plan goes into Anthology. It goes into your e-portfolio. So Monday when it's due, please make sure to upload it to Anthology. So I'm going to stop for a moment and I'm going to answer any questions that you might have about the lesson plan. Feel free to unmute yourself. If you prefer, you can also type in the chat box. I will answer the chat box now as well. So the floor is yours just for a moment. The floor is yours. Anybody can open up their mic and talk.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi. I think you already answered my question about if we just can use what we already did in the previous lesson plan and add it to the new lesson plan we have to turn in on Sunday, but just incorporate your suggestions that you told us. Is that pretty much what we have to do?
Yeah. So the proposal is really, it was just kind of like the wide brush strokes. It wasn't all the detail. For the lesson plan, you really want to be detailed in what you're doing. So a lot of people wrote, as we know, for proposals, a lot of people, and lesson planning in general, some people are very, they have a lot of stuff cognitively, a lot of things in their mind, but they may not communicate it on paper. So what I'm asking you to do is, in the lesson plan, communicate all the details, what exactly you're going to do, what your students should be doing. And so here you're really trying to communicate everything. So the proposal was really just meant for the really big ideas. This is where you really kind of iron out all the details of all the lesson plans. So yes, but Michelle, you can take over the material from the proposal, fill out the lesson plan, and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question about the lesson plan? Okay, so if we're good, if something comes up, you're more than welcome to ask. But I'm going to go ahead and shift gears to the actual final exam. Okay, so so I did open up, I think it was yesterday, I opened up module 7. This is actually going to be the last module that is going to appear inside of Brightspace for you. So it's preparing for and completing the summative assessment. Summative assessment is just your final exam. I prepared a lot of, so let me give you some of the details. And I did do this quite a bit in the announcements. And again, I'm sorry about just over announcing and sending too many emails. I know, but it's to try and keep you on track, because I know you all are very busy educators, and sometimes it helps just to kind of keep you like, what's up today? What do you need to really focus on? For the summative assessment, for the final exam, there's going to be 30 multiple choice questions. So there'll be 4 choices for each question. You'll complete the 30 multiple choice questions. And again, it's all what you learned from the course. It is open book, it's open note, it's open. You can use the web, I don't care. It's fine. The next, and I do have one essay question. It is based on the ISTE standards for students. So it's about the objectives that, and these are the things that you would really use for planning instruction, for when you're dealing with your academic programs. It's really what you want your students to kind of become familiar and expert in. The question is, I'm going to ask you, select 3 of the standards and identify 3 strategies that you can use to address these standards in your classroom. So it's 3 standards, 3 strategies on how to deal with each of these standards in your classroom. So it's that's really your test. It's 30 multiple choice questions, and it's 1 essay. Now for the essay, you don't have to write like a paper as you would do like an academic paper. You can just write just like you do if you were having your students complete their own written response. You just, you focus on what the main question is, and you just write away. I will say I do want some specific ideas when it comes to dealing with these strategies. So try and think about, okay, if I want my students to be digital citizens, which is ISTE standard 3, what are some of the strategies in my classroom I can incorporate into it, or I can get my students to learn about or do to fulfill these ISTE standards. There's other ones on design, or if you're a designer, if you're an analyst, you can think about all these different things. So I'm asking you to become experts in the ISTE standards. Okay. So how am I going to prepare you for this? Now, number one, I left my course wide open, so you can go back to all the videos, the readings, the books. You can go to all that. You can use that during your test. Now, I will say this: 30 multiple choice questions. You're going to go through it pretty fast. The essay is going to take you a little bit of extra time. Okay, it'll take you a little bit of time, but again, I'm not grading on the best spelling, as long as you can clearly articulate what you're trying to say, and as long as I understand what it is and it's aligned to the ISTE standard, you're going to get credit for it. You're going to have 75 minutes to complete this. That's a lot of time for 30 questions and then an essay. The essay is probably, it's not going to take you that long if you're very comfortable with the ISTE standards. I'm also not asking you to memorize stuff. I'm asking you to be able to take some, just kind of have notes to the side for yourself, use those notes, whatever you would like to do. You can go to book, but that's going to take a lot of time. So that's why I'm asking you to still try and study kind of like the traditional way also, is go through your notes, kind of get used to remember what the what we've learned through the courses, the videos, and through the readings. I'm helping you to focus your studying by providing you, ta-da, the study guide. So in here, I have a listing of all the different ideas and concepts you really should be familiar with. You can see that there's the ISTE standards. In fact, I even tell you that the essay is about the standards. I ask you, what are the common core state standards? I don't need you to memorize this common core state standards. I just need you to know, what are they? Why would you need to even know why, what the common core state standards are? I do ask you what are, a couple little technical questions about computers and about learning using a computer. Like, what's the size of a file? Like, what's a megabyte? What's a kilobyte? What's a gigabyte? Which one's bigger? The file dissemination. How do you pass electronic materials out to your students? Okay. There's a lot of different ways, but one way is probably the best, and that's using your school network. And also organization, the file organization, as in, how do you rename files, saving as, and folders? Okay. Now, I will say this. You'll see that there's a section here on Microsoft Office. I got rid of a lot of the questions dealing with Microsoft Office. It's just very technical. A lot of people have gone to using Google tools, so I'm fine with that. If you find a question, a lot of times you can still Google it and find it. I don't mind at all. There are those laws and policies. I will say this, I did have a happy time of putting some of that content into the test, because that's really the application-based stuff that you really need to know. It keeps you out of trouble. We don't want anybody to get in trouble by having a FERPA violation, or, understanding like by violating, we don't want anybody to violate copyright. So here are some of the laws that you really should be associated with. The interactive whiteboard. I used to have this as a much bigger part of my course. Now it's not as important, because a lot of times, a lot of schools, some of them have it, some of them don't. However, I will say this, interactive whiteboards were part of the readings. They are in your Francom book. So just understand what are some of the benefits of having an interactive whiteboard and using an interactive whiteboard. And next are all the things we explored in Module 6, and that is the theories, the learning theories behind using technology with learners, and that is like cognitivism, behaviorism, what is constructivism, what's constructionism. There's some difference there. What are some student-centered practices? What are the benefits of cooperative learning? A lot of this, again, is in the readings and in the learning materials. Some instructional strategies, some assessment types. Again, these are just very general education questions. And as you're doing your lesson planning, you should be kind of an expert at the Assure model. Okay, we're for goodness sakes, we're using it for our lesson plan. Bloom's taxonomy. Should become an expert on Bloom's taxonomy. Real world application, scenario-based instruction, of course, the essentials of lesson planning, really. That's really the big lists of the topics that are going to be covered on the test. It's very manageable. If you have a good, night or two of good studying, it should serve you fine, and be prepared for the test. It's open note as well, anyway. If that's not enough help, I've given you further support. I've given you a practice test using a digital tool called Quizzes. Okay. Do me a favor. Is everybody on Module 7 right now? Everybody on there? Okay, good. Dolores, you had a question, or is that I'm on Module 7?
No, I don't see Module 7. I'm in the.
You know what? It disappeared again. I don't know. So I had a question on 300 for my other session, my other course. Said it would disappear. I made it visible, so I have no idea why it kept on making it invisible. If you hit the refresh button, you should see Module 7 now. Sorry about that.
I'll do that now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's my fault. So thank you for catching my mistake. So anyway, you should now be able to see Module 7. You should be able to come in and see the study guide. You don't just have to see it on my screen. You can actually access it and read it now. So thank you, Dolores. Go ahead. You should see the probably the third link down as a practice test. So if you click on it, just do me a favor and just test that you can open it. You should see a screen that looks like this, Quizzes. You should see that it's a little place for your name. I want you to I'm not going to make you take the test tonight. I want you to make sure to take the test at least once before the final exam. These questions on this practice test come from the same question bank that I use for the final exam. So I'll be honest with you, if you do fairly well on this, you'll do fairly well in my multiple choice section. Okay. It's fun. It's a gamified activity. It's free. So it took me like 5 minutes to sign up for it. You're even able to share resources with other teachers. So it's called Quizzes. Again, it's a great resource for fun assessments. So if you like the digital tools that you got to read about in the Gonzalez book, if you liked all the different resources I showed you in the module 5, the one that I had you take a look at with all the different digital tools, you should like this as well. At least take this once. Please also make sure that you're putting your first and last name here. So this way I give you credit for the practice test. The practice test I think is worth like 5 or 10 points. You don't even have to do anything except take this practice test. There's nothing you have to do inside of Brightspace. There's nothing you have to do inside of Anthology for the practice test. I grade it all from here. Okay, I'm just going to say, oh, she did it. He did it. Excellent. I'm just going to give points, then you'll be done. You can also take this test more than once. I allow you to take this test multiple times. So if you want to take it more than once, I don't see why that would be a problem at all. Okay. So again, so this is a link. You don't want to just go to the open link quizzes.com. You want to actually click on the link inside of module 7 because that's going to take you to my specific quiz. I'm not going to make you take it now, but are there any questions about taking the practice test?
Yes.
Can you
Professor
repeat that
Shaw,
one more
this is
time,
Narita
Professor
Baldwin.
Ryan, what you just said about open the link?
So in module 7, there's a link that's called practice test. Did you find it?
Yeah, I saw it on the screen earlier today.
Okay.
Okay.
So what this is I'm asking you, this is going to take you to just a practice test. I want you to at least complete it one time, Sharon. So this way it's practice for the exam. On how I will say my exam's not as pretty and cool as this fun activity, and again, it's also introducing you to a fun tool that you might consider using in your classroom in the future. Okay. So that's
Professor Shaw,
yes, Narita.
yes. Good evening, everyone. My question about the game is is it timed?
It may be, I may have put in a minute each question.
Okay.
So I gave you a lot of time for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, again, I'm just looking that you've taken the test. I'm not looking for that you were able to like do it. Because again, this test is open note. It's open book. It's open to, you can web browse. You can do whatever you like during the test. I don't mind. You just don't want to close the test. That's about it. So it's really about just communicating the ideas in which you kind of learn with the ISTE standards. And the multiple choice is self-graded, so it grades it as it goes. So, let's see, Dolores.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I know that you said be cautious not to close the test because I clicked the X in the corner and it says enter a join code. Did I close the test?
That may have been the practice test.
That's for the practice test, right?
You accidentally closed it. You can
Clicked
just
the
take it
X.
again.
I clicked that X in the corner right there and it said join code.
It will close it for you. See, it'll close it for you. If that happens, just go back to my website. Just go back to Brightspace and click on the practice test again.
Now, when you said to take the final exam, you said be cautious not to close it.
Yes. So what you will do is the test is taken. In fact, I was just going to get there and show you exactly what to do.
Excuse me. Okay.
So that's okay. So you don't see this, and it's invisible for a reason because I'm going to open this up on Monday for you. And you're going to have a window from Monday to Saturday to complete this. So I think I opened it up on the 12th. It's going to close December 17th at 11:59 p.m. So you get a 5-day window to take this 75-minute exam. Now, you only get one time to take the test, okay? If you have some sort of glitch or technology fails you, you can email me and just plan for another session that you can actually take the test. I'll figure out a way for you to I'll just probably reset it and let you take it again. So what you're going to want to do is when you take the test, you don't want to do this in a Starbucks or someplace where you have shoddy internet. You want to do it someplace where you have a good internet connection. You can have some nice quiet time to take a 75-minute test. All right. So, that's up to you. That's for your planning. I give you a 5-day window. That's a lot of time. So and I suggest taking it, I suggest not waiting for Friday. I suggest not waiting for Saturday, because come Saturday, it's closed and I can't open it back up because technically Saturday night is the end of the course. I can't do anything past it. In fact, I'm going to make an announcement about like a couple people have outstanding work. I can't accept anything after the 17th. It's just a no-go. Okay. So what you'll do to take this test, you'll go and there'll be a link here. This will actually be active. You can see it on my screen. You won't see it on yours. But what I do is I click this link right here, and it's going to give you all sorts of warnings about, hey, it's time to take this test. Get ready. In fact, here are the instructions for it. You'll take the test. It'll be 30 questions for the multiple choice. And what it'll do is it'll have 10 questions per page. You'll probably just hit next to go to the next page. You'll just keep on going. Then you'll also have at the very end, I made sure it was at the very end, is the essay. You'll complete the essay and type it in. And when you're ready, there'll be some sort of action button that says submit test or, send test, or it'll be some sort of action that makes you send the test and submit the test to me. So when you're done taking that test and it's submitted, you'll get some sort of like success screen that says you've successfully submitted your test. And if you end up seeing a score in your grade book, don't be nervous. Don't look like it's a failure or anything like that. Remember, I still have to manually go grade your essays. So it's going to be the score is going to be a little different. So the final exam scores, I'll share them after I'm done grading them. But I have to manually grade essays. I wish the system would grade my essays for me, and everybody's laughing because they're teachers and they know that we have to do essays, we have to grade them. But afterwards, I'll make sure to share what the final grade was. I can't pass out the test back to you. It's just not this is my tests I create, they're proprietary, so I have to keep them. But you're going to have plenty of, again, I've really kind of really tried to roll out the red carpet for you all, so this way you all could be successful. Okay. Are there any questions on the final exam? So you're all ready to take it right now? I'm just kidding. Again, bad dad jokes. I'm sorry. I have 2 kids upstairs that I torture. So, Dolores, did you have a question? I know that you showed your screen for a second, then turned it off. Is everything okay?
I think so. I'm just,
Just making sure.
digesting all of it, but it is well.
Okay, good. This is going to be very manageable. It sounds scary. It really isn't. I promise. If you take the practice test and you feel like you do fairly well, then you're going to be in good shape. Again, I'm even telling you, I give you the questions in that fun practice activity. I even told you what ISTE standards. You can even have the ISTE. Again, I'm not focusing on memorization. I'm focusing on what you could do with what you've learned from the course. As long as you kind of come up with good strategies on how to use the ISTE standards with, when it comes to everything, you'll be in good shape. Michelle.
Is the essay on the practice test as well?
No. I've done everything. Unfortunately, it's really like quizzes isn't really meant for like an activity. And also, since I have 50 of you taking this test, I really can't grade like a practice activity. But I did tell you what it was about. It's just about, in fact, I even told you what the question is. So if you want to like kind of just take some of the standards and kind of brainstorm, how can I use this in my classroom? How can I bring this into my classroom? You're really going to be fine, Michelle. That's what I would do to study for the ISTE standards. I'd write down each standard, kind of really like read each standard, figure out exactly what it's asking, what's encompassed inside the standard, and then think about how you could do that inside of a classroom, what you could do, or even inside of a school. It's fine with me. So it's really about just applying how could I really help my students achieve this standard inside of my academic program.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question, Professor.
Yes, Dolores.
I know since we're talking about the standards, I know that's also in the lesson plan. Basically, when we were talking about the ISTE standards, it's from the educator student side and just how it's applied.
Yeah, so it's the student ones. It's how it's so it's how, if I'm doing lesson planning or if I'm doing instruction, if I'm a teacher, how am I going to try and get my students to master these standards?
Okay.
There is a set of ISTE educator standards that is like what you really would be kind of evaluated on if you were a teacher teaching with technology. That's really a measurement of how you grow professionally. You're going to be doing kind of like a final activity based on, like, you remember at the very beginning of the course, you did a quick little activity, like looking at the pre-assessment. You kind of went through and did S's and N's and stuff like that. Come next week, I'm going to send you a quick little activity saying, hey, can you just take 5 minutes to complete this? I want to see how much you've grown throughout your time together. So
in that lesson, excuse me.
Yep.
In our lesson plan that we have to submit, that ISTE is coming from the student perspective or the teacher's perspective when we put it in our lesson plan?
You want to focus in on the student skills, that how you're going to get the students to be successful in the skills that you're trying to teach them.
Okay.
I'll give you an example how they're going to be like. If I was doing ISTE citizens, I think one of them is like how to model being a good citizen. You could actually, you could get them to say, well, if they're using materials from other places, that they're citing the sources in which they used materials, or that they're using multiple ways of doing assessment. That in instruction, I have them complete assessments, all types of assessments. I have them. They might do, like. Was it a Padlet? They may like brainstorm on a board. They might fill out a graphic organizer. It's just a lot of different ways that they can be successful and show ISTE standards for students. So,
okay. And my final question on the debriefing, that was the last part of that lesson plan. So is that just to say what they're going to do like for the next day, or
no, there's two parts. There's like what's going to happen next, and then the debriefing is kind of like the closure of the lesson. Like, how are you going to bring this to a natural end? It's not always the assessment. Sometimes people have their exit tickets as a natural segue into the closure or into that debrief. So it's really about like how you're kind of ending the lesson with them.
Okay, so I know I said an exit ticket. Is that debriefing? Will you consider that debriefing?
That would almost be an exit ticket. I'm sorry. That would almost be an assessment.
Okay. So
going over the exit ticket would be a debrief.
Going over it. Okay, thank you. That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So the because they're going to complete that, you might collect it, you might do this, that. And again, it's not just exit tickets can be done in many ways. They can be digital or non-digital. So
now this debriefing is all within the day of the lesson at the end.
Yeah, the only thing that's not is like there's a box there that asks about the next day or the follow-up activity or something like that. Like what's going to happen next? That could be what's going to happen tomorrow. And again, you don't have to write a ton about it. It's obviously seeing what's the next progression in the lesson.
Okay, just for more clarity, and also in the debriefing, could you put up like a parking lot, like have questions on people, put questions on the wall, something?
Sure.
But you have to answer them that day because you have to debrief and see what they accomplished, correct?
Well, parking lots, you can do it either way. You could do it that day if you have the time. If not, that could also be something as a follow-up. So I guess it depends, really.
Okay.
I'd almost accept it either way. That's also those elements I really don't. I don't want to sound like sound dismissive, but I don't grade those sections. I
Okay.
really focus in on the other portions of the lesson plan. And it's not that I'm not interested in, it's just that, you know, some people will do some things differently. And it's hard. It's that element's a little subjective because I don't know what's going to come next. You all do. But I do obviously see that you've completed it.
Okay. Now this
Okay.
lesson plan is just a fictitious one, a model that we're making up, or we actually doing it?
Yes. No,
Okay.
I'm not. And in fact, I even started off with the very first announcement. I stated, you don't have to teach this
I
lesson.
remember you
I
saying
hope that you
that's
would.
what-
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope that one day you would. I'm hoping that you're
Yeah.
planning for something in the future, but if not, it's not a big deal.
Okay,
It's
I did
this
see you say
course.
that. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
I apologize. I'm speaking over you. I did see you say that, but I'll just see how that the briefing will come in. If it's fictitious, we just make up something of what we think it would be. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep, that's
That's
fine.
clear. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
No
Okay.
problem. Yeah, a lot of times, you know, and with lesson plans, obviously, if you're doing this for formal evaluation, you're going to really want to be serious about it. It's just from a you know, instructor and a professor inside of a school. It's not always, you know, I'm just trying to see that there's a natural progression of what's happening here to what's happening next. So,
Thank
Dolores,
you.
I think you're going to be safe either way.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, this is good. This really can kind of concludes this voluntary session. Thank you very much. And again, if I haven't, let me first like make a couple pitches before I let you all go. Number one, if don't
I'm
forget.
sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry. I had put it in the chat. Maybe you didn't see it, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I was wondering, did you take the essay before the questions on the final exam?
Oh my goodness. Good question, Kyoka. I would do. I'm trying to think of how Brightspace does it. I think it's at the very end. I would just do all the multiple choice first. Just do all the multiple choice first and then spend the most time on your essay.
Thank you.
Because I can't remember if Brightspace is friendly and lets you go back. I would just complete all the multiple choice first because it's going to take you the least amount of time.
I do have one more question too. I
Go ahead.
apologize.
Yeah, that's fine.
For the lesson plan, when you speak of UDL guidelines, I saw in one of our exercises, you had sample work. Are we to take some sample work to put in this?
No, it's the specifications I said is that you have to provide, good question here. One of the specifications, if you look at the lesson plan, it asks for one single student or teacher resource. So with lesson plans, we know that we have, you know, you have to create all these lessons and these materials. You have to have everything ready to go. For my lesson plan, I'm only asking for one single resource that you would share with a student or one resource you would use with your students.
Okay,
It
thank
could
you.
be a graphic organizer. It could be your exit ticket that you've created. It could be a rubric that you developed. It could be, you know, I said a graphic organizer already, a note-taking sheet. It could be the warm-up, just some sort of resource. You can put that as a separate document inside of Anthology, or you can even just put it right at the very bottom of the lesson plan. Either is fine with me. And
Okay,
again, you don't have to create 5 or 10 of them. You just have to create one.
thank you.
If you use a Google Doc or something like that, just make sure the link for the document or the slideshow or whatever you create, just make sure it's public to where I can get to it. Because sometimes people will link like Google Docs for me to view, and they'll not realize that I'm not in Prince George's County, so I can't view the documents. So you can just make it and share the public link in your website if you use a Google document. All right, folks, listen, again, please. Oh, the last couple of things. Number one, the course evaluations. Course evaluations closed December 10th. It was just a weird, I don't know why they closed it a little earlier than your final date. It's news to me why. But please make sure you complete your course evaluation by the time, by the December 10th date. To get to it, I'm still sharing my screen, so that's good. You go to tools and you can go to complete your course eval via smart evals. If you The system, I think, sometimes emails you. In fact, it used to. If you have an email that says, hey, do your course evaluation, you can also get to the system that way as well. I just wanted to show you how to fill out your course eval. And it has a bunch of questions, and I do read your feedback, and I do try and get back, I do try and improve my craft as I go through my courses. Okay. And I do take your feedback and consider it. I'm not one of those professors that just ignores it. I do stuff with it. All right. I'm going to stop recording now. Let's see.